We're going to open on Rachel Maddow, but spend most of this episode on Gavin Newsom. But this is on Rachel Maddow already covering up for, that is, MSNBC is already announcing the January 14th Trump birthday national riot. She calls it protest, but we all know what this is going to be. Here's Rachel Maddow doing her job on MSNBC, disseminating the radical Marxist pro-violence party agenda.
And soldiers, and you guessed it, tanks. It is still unclear if those tanks will be rolling or stationary or on the back of semi-trucks, maybe. But the whole spectacle is set for the 250th anniversary of the founding of the U.S. Army, which also happens to be the president's own birthday, June 14th. And if that news makes you want to be somewhere, anywhere else, take heart. Something else is happening that day. At more than 100 locations around the country thus far, I have a feeling there's going to be more than that. A coalition of groups, including Indivisible and Social Security Works and 5051, they are all organizing a nationwide day of protest for June 14th. They're calling it No King's Day.
There it is. That's 111 locations in the United States that are going to blow up in violence on Trump's birthday and the 250th birthday, same day, of the U.S. Army. This is organized. It is funded. It is highly paid for. They're already starting the messaging. Look, they've got their little logo with the Trump wearing a No King's Day. This is going to be radical, and it's coming the 14th, just a few more days, and we're going to cover it.
They're calling it No King's Day. As they put it on their website, quote, Donald Trump wants tanks in the street and a made-for-TV display of dominance for his birthday, a spectacle meant to look like strength.
Well, it is supposed to look like strength. It's supposed to send a message to China and Russia that we've still got tanks and we're still strong. Flexing military power in the streets, not a big deal. Shows pride in our army.
But real power isn't staged in Washington. It rises up everywhere else. Joining us now is Ezra Levin, co-founder and co-executive director of Indivisible. Ezra, it's nice to see you this evening. Thanks very much for making time.
Indivisible is the one that Hillary Clinton was paid to do that promotional for. We showed you a lot of Indivisible stuff. This is the one of the two partners that started this thing, but Hillary Clinton is all over already promoting Indivisible. So this goes all the way to the deepest of deep, dark globalist states.
Great to see you, Rachel.
So we've spent a lot of time covering sort of the character and the effect of protests of all kinds around the country. A lot of those organized through Indivisible, a lot of them organized through 5051 and other groups.
All of them violent.
What is the basic idea, the specific idea, I guess, around June 14th?
Look, Donald Trump wants to spend tens of millions of taxpayer dollars to throw himself a big fancy parade with tanks in the streets. And on one level, this is ridiculous, right? But he is doing this for a reason. This is straight out of the authoritarian playbook.
Okay, which is more out of the authoritarian? He's complaining that Trump spends tens of millions of dollars on a parade. There's already been more than tens of millions of dollars, perhaps hundreds of millions of dollars in damage to cars, property, businesses, human lives by the riots. They're not going to count the cost in those riots. They're like, hey, to make an omelet, you got to break some eggs, that old communist trope. Now, here's Gavin Newsom. It says Gavin Newsom has no problem using the National Guard as a prop for some political theater. Remember, this is him in 2021 when they did the ridiculous move of bringing out the National Guard in California. Because of what? They were performing theater, that the January 6th riots were going to go nationwide. So he spread the National Guard over all their government buildings. Watch this. They love political strength and theater on their political cause. Pretending like January 6th was some kind of a national event. It wasn't. It was isolated at the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. Had nothing to do with California on the other side of the United States.
Let me be clear. There will be no tolerance for violence. That's why today.
No, you tolerate violence. The last weekend, you love it. Defend it, pay for it.
Along with the CHP and Office of Emergency Services, I've activated the California National Guard to support the CHP to enhance security with an initial deployment of up to 1,000 Guard members to protect critical state infrastructure in and around the state capitol.
So he will support the National Guard coming into California and their federal agents, or even sending them to the Washington state capitol. But he is not okay with them protecting property damage. They're like, hey, you got to let it burn.
Also today,
in
we're
LA.
standing up temporary security perimeter around the capitol. We'll, of course, share additional information and additional measures that we're taking in the coming days. But let me be clear. What we witnessed in our nation's capital was an undemocratic and unconscionable assault on our republic and the freedoms upon which our nation was founded.
And now I only got to ask you, which is a greater, more widespread attack on our republic? What happened on January 6th, or what's on the streets? I mean, I didn't see foreign flags flying on January 6th. I didn't see Mexico, Israel, Hamas. You go to LA, it's Palestinians, Mexicans, and communist flags are being flown. So which one exactly is the existential threat? In other words, this is all BS. You can just ignore anything this guy says. By the way, his presidential run is now over because his branding has to be to defeat this stuff. On January 6th and on branding regarding what is violent and what is not. Over here is Brianna Morello, the FBI whistleblowers. Garrett O'Boyle and Stephen Friend have come forward and reported this to Congress as it was happening in real times. After coming forward, they were shunned from the agency because they were saying, this is just the news headline, Biden administration used January 6th to artificially inflate domestic terrorism threat. Declassified intel shows that was just released today, guys, proving that Gavin Newsom is a liar, including he had to contribute his part of offering up California national support troops to Washington, D.C. Now, here's the great Victor Davis Hanson on the Gavin Newsom failure.
But here's what's interesting. The mayor, Karen Bass, came down in her public comments on the side of the protesters who were protesting the idea of deportation at all, kind of like Kamala Harris used to march against deportation. And Gavin Newsom then gave a series of editorializations that I think have ruined his chances ever to be a serious national candidate. He said this was
thank God.
Chaotic. This was reckless. And he said that they were just trying to have an arbitrary deportation quota. Gavin, 12 million people came into the country illegally. That was 3 million a year. That was 250,000 per month. That was over 8,000 a day. They have not been able to deport more than 1,000 on most days, sometimes 500. They would have to deport 8,000 people every single day for 4 years to get back where we were with 20 million illegal aliens when Joe Biden entered office. So it's not a quota. It's an effort to stop an invasion. And it's a very funny invasion because now Gavin is mad that they nationalized the California Guard. Trump has that ability. And people said, no president, they have to request it. No, they don't. You think that JFK said to George Wallace when he nationalized the Alabama National Guard, said, would you please let us nationalize your guard so you can be removed from stopping African-American people going to the University of Alabama? No.
No. Again, the Democrats should be very familiar with that history. I don't know what their problem is. Of course, here's Stephen Miller. What does Gavin Newsom mean? When he keeps saying the presence of ICE officers and the troops necessary to protect their lives and duties are, quote, inciting riots. Remember, they love that incitement. They tried hanging that on Trump for inciting the riot in January 6th, though he said to peacefully protest. He's adopting the argument of the insurrectionists, enforcing federal immigration law in our city is not allowed. We will riot if you do. Newsom isn't trying to suppress the anti-American revolt. He's encouraging it. More from Stephen Miller. California is the largest sanctuary city in America. What does that mean? The governor has ordered every single police department and sheriff's office to shield criminal illegal aliens from removal. In a normal state, when an illegal alien is arrested, they're run through a federal database. If it hits that they are illegal or deportable, ICE asks the police or sheriffs to turn them over to ICE when their incarceration is complete. In California, when ICE lodges this detainer, it is refused, and the criminal alien is released back into the street to endlessly reoffend. California has more criminal aliens than any other state in the U.S. by far, and each and every one of them can victimize Americans, freely knowing they will never be turned over by authorities to ICE. Here's John Kennedy on more.
We've got a wolf problem in Los Angeles. They're not peaceful protesters, they're wolves. They're hurting people. They're destroying property. So you say, well, where's the governor? Well, the governor is a sheep. He'll tell you, I'm a sheep. He's a sheep in sheep's clothing. He thinks cops are a bigger problem than criminals. So then you say, well, where's the mayor of Los Angeles? Maybe she can stop it. Well, she's a sheep too. More sheep is not going to solve the wolf problem. So the federal government sent in troops, and we're stopping the wolf problem. Last night was a better night, and tonight will be better still. It's not hard to figure out to me, and I think this is what I think most Americans are looking at this and going, stop the wolves. And a lot of them are thinking, you know, nobody's talking about it, but who's going to pay for all this? You know, who's going to pay for all this destruction? Are we going to get the bill? That's the way I see it.
I think the rest of the country should not pay one dime of that bill. What do you think? Tell me in the chat below. Should your tax dollars go to pay for Gavin Newsom's neglect? Or should not the LA residents who voted for Gavin Newsom overwhelmingly, should they not have to pay for their own damages of these imported criminals into their area? When Gavin Newsom said President Trump was fanning the flames, he was speaking about some kind of weird metaphor.
Tests are being seen right now.
Well, Gavin Newsom, governor of California, said something really confusing rather recently when he said that President Trump was just fanning the flames with his actions right now. It's confusing because was that a metaphor towards something else, or was that about actual literal flames of the cars that are set ablaze by rioters throughout Los Angeles?
Oh, who exactly is setting the flames? They're going, Trump's fanning the flames. Gavin Newsom said it. This is the BBC, by the way. This is all the way over in Britain. They're going, hey, Trump isn't the one setting the fires. Gavin Newsom is setting the fires. Therefore, he's the one who's fanning the flames. More Victor Davis Hanson on Laura Ingraham.
I don't think I've seen a meltdown of a modern politician ever, as we've seen with him the last 3 days.
He's talking about Gavin Newsom.
He's polling 27% popularity. 2% of the Democratic Party thinks he should be their next standard bearer. He picked a fight with Donald Trump and called the ICE legal efforts to deport illegal aliens. He said it was reckless, it was chaotic. He sided with them. Then he said it wasn't violent. Then he begged Tom Homan to come after him with this kind of braggadocio, come on, tough guy, come and get me. And then he picked a fight with the Treasury Secretary, and he announced that because we pay $80 billion more than we get, we might not pay any taxes to the federal government at all. I mean, that's 1% of the federal revenue is California's so-called imbalance. But that was a felony to advise California taxpayers not to submit to the IRS what they owe. So
Gavin Newsom, felon. The crimes are just racking up the more these guys try and do it. There's worse, though. Here's more on the Democrat Party funding this whole thing with their fake charity organizations.
What's going on in Los Angeles? What do you make of it?
Well, I'm also a member of the California State Assembly, so I am receiving updates as they come in, and it is an absolute violent mess. Gavin Newsom and California Democrats are singularly responsible for the mayhem that's broken out in California because, number one, they incited it. They took to social media last week on Friday when ICE conducted their raids to, remember, let's be clear, as Jason just said, arrest criminals, some of the worst criminals, sex offenders, rapists, burglars, people with violent crimes, assault perpetrators. All of these violent criminals were being rounded up by ICE, not just, people here without immigration status. We're talking about real criminals. And what they did is they said that we all needed to take to the streets. So Newsom, Karen Bass, Democrat politicians called on people to go to the streets. Second, they fund the organizations that are organizing these protests. We found over $34 million went to the Coalition for Immigrant Humane Rights in Los Angeles, $34 million in state taxpayer money. And they're the lead organization, not only organizing these protests, but they run a hotline telling people where the ICE agents are and where they should be deploying to. So they're basically giving people their assignments as to where they're to show up and to attack ICE agents. And then finally, they try to shift the blame to Donald Trump. This blame is uniquely at the feet of Gavin Newsom, Karen Bass, and the other Democrats that have created a complete mess out here with their sanctuary state policy.
And LA people largely, overwhelmingly voted these people into office. Always remember that when you see property. Now, I feel for any Republican that voted against it, but California overwhelmingly is a one-party state. And you guys did this. You have to vote new leadership in. And if you don't vote new leadership in, then every Democrat, and I'm talking about all my Hollywood buddies, they're like 99.9% Democrats. All of you deserve the fallout of Democrat leadership that you put into place. You deserve the fires. You deserve these riots. This is what you voted for, especially now in hindsight that you know this ideology. If you don't have the stomach to vote for a Republican, then the next riot that comes, I hope that that fallout and that destruction comes to people who voted for it, Democrats, and not to Republicans who voted against it. Here's the Hill. Border czar Tom Homan says Gavin Newsom arrest talk is blown out of proportion. This goes back to how the media is trying to manipulate the argument into Tom Homan being the bad guy, saying that he could arrest Tom. Well, they were the ones that were feeding him that question the whole time. The press was going, Tom Homan, should we arrest Gavin Newsom? Are you going to arrest Gavin Newsom? You said that no one's above the law. You said this and that. Well, they're taking the other side. They're trying to manipulate the data into getting you more concerned about Tom Homan. And Tom Homan's just going, look, all this talk of arresting Gavin Newsom, it's what your agenda is. Here's Reverend Calvin Robinson on the Islamicization of Britain, posted by my pal Nancy Pearcey. I taught with her together for 4 years out at Houston Baptist University. All the research suggests that there is only one demographic that votes as a bloc, and that's the Mohammedans. That is, these are Muslim radicals in the UK. So they're trying to get all the illegals and Palestinians to also vote as a bloc in Los Angeles. That's what I mean. This is their takeover strategy. Robinson said, using preferred term by some Christians in medieval Europe for adherents of Islam, they vote how their imam tells them. And so the left-wing parties in Europe, but especially in the UK, have been courting that Mohammedan bloc vote, flirting with them, promising the world to them to get their votes. But now they've got the votes, and now they're in power. And the Mohammedans are taking that for themselves. Robinson accused the UK and specifically of the media for the media is their megaphone for being complicit in Muslim takeover under the pretense of diversity. Accordingly, Robinson predicts that by 2050, the UK will be a predominantly Islamic state because, as he said, Muslims do not abort their unborn children. We're killing off our own next generation, and they're Muslims sitting there rubbing their hands as they outbreed us 10-1. It's the same thing. These illegal Hispanics, they know, have anchor babies here, put them out. Now, here's on the funding of the riots. Gavin Newsom is funded by George and Alex Soros. No wonder he wants LA destroyed. Here's some of the numbers. Look, here's George Soros. Each of these is giving money to, this is all the way back to 2021, $500,000 to stop the Republican recall of Gavin Newsom, $250,000 stop the Republican recall of Gavin Newsom, $250,000 stop the Republican recall of Gavin Newsom. Excuse me. This is from 2015, $28,000 Gavin Newsom campaign. Here's $28,000 Gavin Newsom campaign. Gavin Newsom campaign. Let's go to the next page here. Oh, so many fundings. These go all the way back. These are all Gavin Newsom from Soros, either George Soros or Alexander Soros, all to Gavin Newsom. And everyone knows George Soros funds every communist outrage, overthrow to undermine the American patriots' vote. Here's Trump.
Right around the time that we were walking in here, the governor and the state attorney general said that they're going to sue you for sending the National Guard in. They're saying there's no invasion, there's no rebellion. The president is trying to manufacture chaos and crisis on the ground for his own political ends. Federalizing the California National Guard is an abuse of the president's authority under law.
Well, it's interesting. You watched the same clips as I did. Cars burning all over the place, people rioting. And by the way, we stopped it. We were able to make it much better, but it still looked pretty bad. And in watching clips last night, people were saying this is really a big problem. And until we we went in, if we didn't do the job, that place would be burning down just like the houses burned down. They were in big trouble last night, Peter. You know it. And the night before, and the night before that. And I feel we had no choice. I don't want to see happen what happened so many times in this country. I watched Minneapolis burn. Look at what happened in so many different parts of California.
That's regarding Black Lives Matter in California with the Rodney King trial. Here's more of Gavin Newsom moving his mouth, which can only mean one thing. Gavin Newsom says he's going to ask the courts to block Trump sending in the Marines.
When does this come to a head? Is this are you hoping for an injunction in the courts?
We're going to immediately seek that first thing tomorrow morning. Absolutely. Look, that's all we got left. There's one, maybe two branches of government left. Sure as hell ain't the legislature.
Right.
I mean, Speaker Johnson, what a joke he is. Completely missing in action.
The only branch they have left are the judges, he said. We sure don't have the legislature, the voters, what they vote into office, just the unelected appointed judges to try and stop this. Now, here's more on the division within the Republican Party. This is John Fetterman, who's going to lose. They say that, this is going to be the split in the Democrat Party. I unapologetically stand for free speech, peaceful demonstrations, and immigration, but this is not that. And he shows a fire with a Mexican flag. This is anarchy and true chaos. Well, Fetterman, your party paid for it. Are you going to stay in your party? My party loses the moral high ground when we refuse to condemn setting cars on fire, destroying buildings, and assaulting law enforcement. Yeah, you're in the wrong party. I'm going to skip this next one and this next one too, because this episode's getting a little long. I got a lot more to start on my next episode. If you haven't subscribed yet, you're going to miss out on 4. Come join us, watch 4 episodes a day and join the Quad Club. That's how you help us out. You subscribe is how you say thank you and get us to 1 million subscribers. And guys, we do not fear Trump, Homan, Hegseth, Pam Bondi. They're all on this. I'm Doug in exile.